Hey folks, Scooter Rockets here, and thanks again for joining me. In my last video on how to rule the world, I covered the machine and the gears of the machine. In this video, it's going to be more about the grease that keeps those gears turning. So thanks again for tuning in, and here we go. From a very early age, I will place an unhealthy emphasis on obedience. This will continue into adulthood. Obedience will be mistaken for a virtue, and it will be more important for the human to obey than to do what is right. Obedient humans make good order takers and will eventually become incapable of thinking for themselves and discerning what is truly right from what is truly wrong. When mixed with my monetary control paradigm, people will become increasingly comfortable just following orders, as refusing to do so will jeopardize their monetary stream. The human will no longer take responsibility for their choices. Instead, they will defer that to a higher authority and say, I was just following orders. I will take the simplest of all the natural laws, which is to do no harm, and I will complicate it beyond comprehension. For whatever reason, these humans love rules. They love making rules, following rules. They love punishing each other for not following rules. If this is done properly, they will start to ignore the most basic laws of creation in favor of my codes of morality. Some of the things in my morality codes actually can be harmful to the humans, but making these into laws will make those things almost irresistible for most people. Because I am fine and upstanding, all of my systems of control will be based on consent. Everything I do to the humans will involve their approval. They will engage me in numerous ways in order to partake of my benefits. Here are some examples. I will train the human to become easily offended, not just from physical aggression, but from opposing ideas and words. I can accelerate this mindset by rewarding a number of humans with large monetary settlements for being offended or for being harmed by another human, even when that offense is purely accidental. Each human will begin to blame other humans for the condition of the culture instead of blaming me. What if I could get the human to place an inordinate emphasis on appearance? Not just the appearance of themselves and other humans, but the appearance of everything in their environment. I could tie this into my celebrity agenda in a big way. But for this to be most effective, fashion would need to be a moving target. I'd have to change it up every year, so that in order to fit in, people will need to change their wardrobes out constantly. They'll need to update the cars they drive, their kitchens, their bathrooms, furniture, haircuts, everything. This would keep my commerce system churning and burning nicely. No doubt about it, these humans really respond to images. If I design moving images or even still images in certain ways and encode them with various color combinations, shadow and light tricks, emotional cues, things like that, these images can evoke powerful emotional responses in the humans. This will be even more effective given the human's predisposition for wanting to live in the past or the future and never in the now. The imagery I provide will constantly reinforce how great things used to be in the past or how great things could be in the future. With enough imagery, the human wouldn't even be able to see its captivity. This imagery concept could be useful in getting the human to embrace my future plans for them and to energize my commerce systems. Living their lives outside of the here and the now leaves them very vulnerable to feeling a sense of lack all the time. Because they are constantly living outside of themselves, I can get them addicted to material things. Averting their attention outside of themselves is the key here. It would be totally hilarious if I could grant special rights and privileges to inanimate things. This would be particularly useful in commerce. If I grant organizations personhood, they would become incredibly powerful. I could use my courts to make sure this happens effectively. Many of these groups would become virtually unstoppable, as they'd carry out my directives with very few reprisals. I would love to be able to mark my slaves in a manner in which they would be recognizable to me and to each other. Maybe I could implant a tiny electric device in their bodies somehow. Nah, they aren't ready for that yet. Actually, my corporate minions could have a blast with this. It would be like a competition to see who could get their marks on as many people as possible. What a great opportunity to get my symbols into the mainstream, too. Sometimes you just have to stick with what works. Like pharmakia, for instance. You know, I've used symbols for eons. Sigil magic is a favorite of mine, actually. During these branding wars that my minion corporations are having, they could carefully and intentionally slip my sigils into their logos. For reasons I can't go into here, I love Saturn imagery, for instance. That will earn big points for me if my corporations can sneak those in. But other geometric sigils will be useful in programming the masses as well, so have fun with it. My symbols work very well on a subconscious level, but I would really like to have something that would require the human's consent, something they would embrace themselves. You know, being made up of trillions of vibrations per second, these humans are very susceptible to vibrational influence. If I could create something, you know, I'll call it music. I could use it to insert very important ideas and concepts into their minds. But more importantly, I could use it to soothe them. If they hear someone else singing about their problems or their goals or their aspirations, the human will vicariously think that they are solving those problems in their own life, just by having heard it and agreeing with it. It will feel empowering, even though it's useless. I love using the creation against itself. You know, I'm creating so much pain and suffering in this world. It would be so cool if I could profit from that. This could be fairly easy, actually. Many of the humans that have profited within my wretched system of control will undoubtedly begin to have this cognitive dissonance arise in their minds when they notice how some humans aren't faring quite as well as they are. As much as these profitable humans will gladly want to maintain credit for their accomplishments, they'll still have a difficult time reconciling the disparities that exist between them and other less fortunate humans. Even if they have the inclination to do something about it, they will not likely have the time to do something about it if they are good disciples of my system. This is where charities would come in. For a cut of the action, I will help the humans feel better about this situation. I know, it's like bringing a glass of water to a person in a burning building, but it soothes the conscience enough to get everyone back to work, and that's what's important. The best thing for me is when 7 billion humans continually part themselves from their reality. They could have gatherings and call them parties. These would contain all sorts of mechanisms to divert the human's attention from their plight. Stimulants, depressants, comfort foods, activities, games, all kinds of things. They will actually celebrate their condition and commiserate with each other. Commiserating is the best way to dull their perspective, as it reduces the expectation of the human to the least common denominator. Getting humans together in groups like this on a regular basis concerns me somewhat, though. What if instead of talking about other humans or just the day's events, what if they started talking about ideas? Once I have the human thoroughly confused as to who and what they really are, it will be very difficult for them to interact with each other. they'll become increasingly awkward in their own skin. They just won't feel right. When I provide a problem, I always provide my solution to the problem. So in this case, I'm going to make it easy for them. I'm going to provide them with identities to choose from. We could call them lifestyles. It'll be like a giant walk-in closet where they can slip on and off different identities throughout their life until they finally find one that agrees with them. But the most important thing is, I don't care which one they choose because they're all going to be part of my script. Here's a nasty little trick. Because my systems elevate certain humans above other humans, it will become increasingly difficult for them to think independently. Because of this, nearly all of the information that they embrace will come to them via another human. This is a gold mine for me. Thousands of misinformed humans running around like they've got their act together, each one starting their own little petri dish with their own little culture. Hey, if they're successful, great. More bad information in the pipeline, another celebrity created, all good. If the petri dish doesn't grow, no big deal. We toss it out, we start over. Unfortunately for me, real truth isn't grown in culture. And if that gets off the chain, I'm kind of screwed. Word magic is essential for me to accomplish my plans. Dumbing down the language is the key. Here's an example. Take the word fear, for instance. Now, what fear has come to mean in the English vernacular is essentially anxiety, worry, dread. Now, don't get me wrong. I love getting the humans all worked up about things that might happen in the future, and I'll even set loose all sorts of events on the world stage to make sure that happens. But actually, if I can get fear to take on a pejorative connotation, like anyone that expresses an idea that makes me fearful or creates fear, well, they'll be considered weak and undesirable because they're not being strong enough and brave enough. See, what these guys don't realize is that the ancient origins of the word fear simply mean for one to be aware of one's environment, for one to position themselves in the proper relationship with any threats that might arise in one's environment. See, if they actually knew this and did this, well, my game is up. Love is another word that I can mess with until it has no sound meaning whatsoever. I made this mistake a few thousand years ago in one of the ancient languages by having as many as 15 different words to describe what love actually consists of. Probably the easiest thing I can do now is change its emphasis from a verb to a noun. Because as a thing, love is essentially powerless. It's just an idea. It'll end up being tossed back and forth by different people. Anyone that gets their hands on it's going to redefine it differently every time. Hopefully they never trace love back to its original source. Well, folks, that wraps up this two-part session on If I Were to Rule the World. And thanks again for watching, and I hope you got something out of it. I get the question frequently or the comment frequently that, okay, everything you're saying, it looks essentially true. But what am I supposed to do about it? You don't give any action plan. Well, there's a reason for that, folks. I'm not a savior, and I'm not a messiah. Okay? Listen to what was said here. Realize how you're being controlled, and then just do the opposite. You're incredibly powerful. Start acting like it.